So we've got to Queenstown, or as I like to call it, Little LA. Look out over there, you can just see the lake. That's Lake Wakatipu, which is the myth, because it's got its own heartbeat. So the myth is of the giant that gets tracked down by the mighty hero and cuts out his heart and throws in lake, which is what still has a beat. Although one thing about that story is the Lake Wakatipu is actually the trough of monsters, not monster. So I've often wondered about the authenticity about that story, just based on that little thing. But you know, it's no biggie. Over there is where Mr. Henderson, one of the really proper developers, built his glass house. We come down Frankton Arm into Queenstown. You see this big house made out of bottles. And this is another contribution that Mr. Henderson did back in the 70s. He thought Queenstown looked really cool if it had a whole bunch of pine trees on it. So he got in a huge 600 and scattered them all around the area. And now they've had nothing but erosion and problems with them ever since. Going through there, if you're going through there, that takes you straight through the little junction, takes you out to Arrowtown and through out there's the Millbrook, and I think Remarkable's out that way. I've sat from over there, which goes like the gondola's actually kind of up and above us, but the little camping ground was over there, and we sat there one night and we watched about 24 UFOs with the emphasis on unknown zipping around the sky. So one out that way basically go straight down, Spinnet style, straight up, two kind of come straight at each other. I'm not going to do it very well, but fingertip to fingertip. At the last moment, they veered off at ungodly angles, which if you'd been a human being, you would have been just jelly. So I don't know what they were, but they were definitely playing around. And I said, I literally don't know what it is. But Queenstown has always had this very strange energy about it, all the mountains around it, and it sort of does seem to attract the extreme good and the extreme darkness. And you know, this obviously the place where your Millbrook, Masonic word for the source, has become a bit of a gateway community for all these sort of billionaires and spooks that have been turning up here. And not that long ago, on September the 11th of this year, they had probably about their 5th major spy meeting since the Twin Towers of 2001. So again, there's, you know, it played a fairly significant role in the election of John Key, supported by Stephen Jennings, the former Treasury official, and these are pretty kind of like the forerunner of things like Cambridge Analytics. In fact, James Tycho, which is one of the people sort of ex-special service sort of electronic spook, runs a company called Cambridge Protection. I've never found any direct link from Cambridge Protection to Cambridge Analytics other than LinkedIn profiles where there does seem to be a revolving door between the companies. And of course, the other amazing thing about Queenstown is the non-stop development. When I was here in the 1995, they were getting more developments put through Queenstown in a month than Christchurch, which is probably about 10 times its size, would do in a year. The civic planning had all list of the kind of worst case environmental issues which they passed in 2000, and since then that report has walked out of. It used to be Queen's Corp, it's now gone back to being a council, but that report walked out of there. And this is also stomping ground of my good friend Alexa, Councillor Alexa. Said, I have no time for any politicians, political parties, but if there's a person out there that I think is, as an individual, worthwhile, then I'm going to make an exception to the rule, but I'm more into the person than the party. And with Alexa, I've known her for probably about 25 years, and I've just got nothing but the utmost respect for her. Like, her politics and her perspectives are not always eye to eye, but you know, she's a pretty switched on lady. You have to get up pretty early in the morning to get one over Alexa, and she's got a good heart and a good conscience. So, you know, at the end of the day, we're rowing in the same direction. There are things, you know, which I know we live in a new world now, so there are some things which her and I don't see eye to eye on, and we just accept that and move on and focus on the things which we do find common ground in, which is probably something that we need to do a lot more of. This is the Reaver's Lodge, which is, I'm staying up here, and this is literally my room there. They put me in Area 51, which I think is rather apt. And this is my particular little, you know, corner for the next 24 hours anyway. Good old 70s lodge, all painted up. You wander around the hallways. No elevator, of course. I have several boxes and bags to move because I've got to go out and deliver to all the cafes this afternoon yet. And it was, I mean, it's a nice, cool place, really nice temperature, you know, cool down by the trees. People actually, you know, obviously quite relaxed here, spa pool, good little lounge area, but you do find someone wandering down the hallways looking for the little kid on the tricycle, you know, biking down the hallways going, red rum, red rum. Anyway, so here you are. It's the deadline stand-up tragedy tour. We've done 2 of the shows so far. Wanaka was a bit of a washout, but I was actually quite secretly glad about that. We've got Riverton tomorrow, which I know some people are coming to. I'm going to go and stir up a whole bunch of others. We put an advert in, which the stuff has managed to get the right date, wrong day. So hopefully that doesn't throw too many people, but at the same time I'm not really that concerned about it, because the thing is, from previous experience when we've done things like Riverton, it does draw out a lot of people from Invercargill, but it does get the name actually out there, and it makes people aware that this thing's going. And the whole purpose of this tour is planting a seed in local communities to talk about these issues, such as, you know, how do we feel about being dragged into the American full alliance with American, where we're basically their bitch. And I said, you know, we've got Melbourne Coke Shard over there. The things that we saw in the sky, like, I don't know what they were, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily, you know, my experience has been, I tend to look for little green men from the Pentagon before I look for little green men from Mars. And I said, you know, over there's the Frankton Airport, where I've seen first-handedly a C-130 Hercules, all with, you know, electronic. And in fact, they used to kind of like fly down that area, and same where all the little kind of dancing lights were, and they go out towards Steep Cove, and there was a lot of activity, military activity over there in the 90s, and not just the US Air Force. New Zealand did a lot of photographing, and actually out towards that way is also Macetown, which is a fairly solidly bit of a lot of very rich people in this country got their origins, their families, including the Mace family itself, from the gold mining industry. And again, right there by the lake is the Masonic Lodge, which I got taken into when I did an article for the Mountain Scene, working for the old sort of Fleet Street boys, Frank, Marvin and Scoop, the journalist who's got the eyes of a bat, or the eyes of an eagle, the ears of a bat, and the compassion of a bunch of Hungarians who've just found a bag full of mewing kittens. They were sort of regular rat bags of their own right, but they actually taught me a lot, and I do look back at my Mountain Scene times with quite fondness, where I did the BNC Virgin Q files, my first dip into what we would call the tinfoil territory, but now just basically a little bit light entertainment. But since then I've learned a lot more, and I think you know, I've discovered that a lot of things that we did as just fairly light crazy stories have actually proved to be things that have been most interesting, and some of the things that we did serious aren't really that big of an issue anymore. That over there is, I can't even remember the mountain, but if you're going to, I'm trying to think of the steamer's name, but you basically catch a little steamer out there, cool little farm, teach you, you know, shearing and fresh scones, and you come back on the steamer again. But that was actually where they filmed the Brotherhood of the, I mean right over there, that's where they filmed the Brotherhood of the Rose, a story by David Morrell, which basically looked at the idea that all intelligence agencies had basically kind of partnered up and come to the conclusion that they were better at running the world than the governments. And a very interesting book in the context of David Moore had obviously done his research quite thoroughly in terms of the agencies, so it was quite funny to see that actually, where they filmed that was actually at one point actually owned by a bunch of ex-military Israelis. So ex-military Israelis, C-130 Hercules at the airport, plus black jets flying in. Millbrook down the road there, where they're having the, you know, September 11th and all the other meetings, Chogham, Heads of State meeting. So there's a lot of movers and shakers that actually come to Queenstown, and it's even quite interesting a number of times where I've gone out to bars at night time and seen interesting characters that normally wearing something like, you know, the short haircut and the built like a brick shit house, and then sort of some little t-shirt was saying seals or some sort of in-joke. Yeah, so spooky old Queenstown. I'm here for a night, and you know, I'm going to probably have a good time, but I'm pretty much, well, that's about all I can handle Queenstown these days. It's a pretty full-on intense place. Anyway, I will give you more reports from the road as I find interesting things to tell you about. I'm going to walk around town, so probably there'll be a couple of things I can point out to you along the way.